Amat merat ike tesol derat ikmerut.
Hey y'all, Dave here. Welcome to part 4 in the 7 Types of Atheism review of John Gray's book, 7 Types of Atheism. This chapter is called Atheism, Gnosticism, and Modern Political Religion. And it talks about the similarities between sort of some modern types of atheism and some classical types of atheism, and how they bear similarities to Gnosticism. Gnosticism being the idea that we can find divine knowledge through doing the right sort of rituals or finding the right kind of beliefs and studying God and history and all that kind of thing. So basically, it's a special kind of knowledge that will give you insights into how the universe works. And as always, I'm joined by the awesome Rev. How's it going, Rev?
I'm doing good, just crack-a-lacking along here in Tennessee.
Nice one. So, what were your thoughts on this chapter?
Well, I sort of felt like it kind of hard to define a government as, in our day and age as a religious one or an atheistic one, or maybe, and somewhere in between it would be, secular, because maybe outside of, like, I think the Vatican, they consider that a country. And I'm sure there's others, but it's not like it was 300-400 years ago where countries are taking their leads from churches.
Yeah.
And you have here in America a secular government that doesn't report to any church or any religion, but is made up of some very religious people, as as part of the driving force. So you have a real hard time defining what the kind of atheists we're looking at here. So you had to kind of change your mindsets, and then at the end of the day, pretty much any secular government, like the United States, for example, is going to be a repressed form of a religious entity. It's going to take the same sort of backbones and the equality of all and stuff like that, which it comes from a lot of Christian or Judaic beliefs.
Yeah, and I think in a secular government, it would be almost impossible to remove all religious influence from that government. Because, like you said, in America, it's, the government is made up of some very religious people, and you can't really deny them their right to help run the country, because then it's not secular, it's not open to all people. And I suppose you could argue that it wouldn't really be a democracy, or it would be democracy in the sort of Greek way, where only certain people are allowed to have that democratic vote.
Yeah.
And in this chapter, he talks about, is it in Munster? The socialist utopia that's set up.
Yeah.
And how that was going to be a non-religious thing, and wasn't it Anabaptist?
Yeah, the Jacobeans or
Jacobeans, yeah.
And that actually, they started building temples to reason.
Yeah, and started killing off people who they thought might be in league with the church or might, be spies for the church. Reason led them to be just as bad of persecutors as the people they were trying to escape from.
Yeah, they just kind of, and again, they kept a lot of the same traditions, the same sort of ideas of worshiping, and of course falling in line. So it's really hard to and this was after the French Revolution. They tried to, bring in a more, get rid of what was bad in the past, but they still sort of bring in and keep with them, the ideas of the progress of humanity, and then we can just reason our way, to the better place, and then we'll just have to get rid of all the other people that disagree with us.
Yeah. And it goes back to something you said in the last episode, where the fact that they've come to this conclusion based on reason and logic just makes them believe that it's even more true, even more worth protecting, and it's even more the right path that we should be taking.
Yeah. And the one of the things that kind of relates to this that he was talking about in the last chapter was they started because of the racism in early science, they started coming up with the idea or the theory that there was a pre-Adam human. And the religious folks were like, and not all, but some were like, no, we're all equal because we all came from Adam. We all came from the same place. So people that sincerely held that religious belief believed that, there wasn't a pre-Adam human race, which explains why they thought the African people were inferior to the European people. And, again, it was the religious idea of equality, which has never really been carried out to where it should be. But, and certainly there's some mixed messages in Christianity regarding that. But a lot of people really clung to the idea of, no, we all come from Adam. We all come from the same place. And in a metaphorical way, that's absolutely true. We do. So that should be one of the principles that we decide to uphold. But not always the case in more attempts to make non-religious governments.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, the casting off of all the stuff, like all the religious elements, it doesn't necessarily erase it from the actual behaviors. So you can declare that this thing is only based on reason, but unless you're stopping to check to make sure that there is a huge difference, and I think this is what one of Gray's major complaints is that oftentimes they drop the religion or the religious element or the religious front, I guess is more kind of what I'm thinking. But they keep the elements. It's sort of like I'll often say that people become atheist, but they don't leave their religious thinking behind.
Yeah. Yeah, you can take the tiger out of the fundamentalism, but you can't take the fundamentalism out of the tiger.
Perfect, yeah. And I think that's kind of what he's getting at in, like, this chapter sort of repeats and reinforces the things from the previous chapters where, we're casting off religion, we're looking through history. History is telling us this tale of redemption and tale of improvement. And it's based on very selective evidence, and it's still based on this kind of faith that they have in the Savior. And so without examining that, it can end up like this colony in Munster.
Yeah, and you almost have to offer that, because that is one of the things about religion, and especially Christianity or the monotheistic ones, is there's a end game for us that we want to reach, and if you throw that out and you're like, there's no end game now, why are we abandoning our hope for a better life and a rewarding life? And then after that, so, asking people to abandon that without giving them something, that's kind of, and I, you see that a lot too with a lot of arguments, is where people will start, trying to substitute a divine evolution with a divine creator, and all of the benefits that a divine creator gives us I think there's a kind of a temptation to say, well, no, it's evolution, and evolution does all this.
Yeah.
And instead of looking at evolution for what it is, it tries to take the place of the things that the religion offered the people.
Yeah, absolutely. They sort of see evolution as having an end goal. It's going to create advanced human species. It's going to get us to this point where we're just logic and reason machines. We're going to cast off religion. I can't remember his name, Conti, where he argued that, humanity exists in three different phases: pre-religion, religion, science, and reason. And I think a lot of people see evolution as progressing towards that post-religion sort of enlightenment thing, but evolution doesn't actually care about any of that. Evolution isn't a guiding force, it's just a thing that happens.
Yeah. And, for the folks out there that are worshiping at the altar of evolution, it's given us religion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't deny that part of what is in it's a fact. It's you can't just look at the good things and assume that if evolution, the process of religious people has kept the survival going, why would it stop? That's perhaps in the grand scope of they always use the chameleons with the different colors, and the green ones survive because they match the leaves that they sit on, and then the pink ones get ate because they stand out. And who doesn't like it? That's always the first flavor I go for. But yeah, so how do you reconcile religion? And part of that is the thing, like I say, I've sort of in my last 10 years or so just watching more culturally diverse TV, you see how integrated folks are with their religion. And I'm watching a show right now on Hulu called Rami. It's very good. And it's about a Muslim community. And the thing that kind of struck me is that the people are 100% Muslim before they even talk about their God belief. And some of them are on a 0 to 10, are a 10 in the God belief. Some of them might be a 1, but they're all 100% Muslim. And they all, now they all have different interpretations. They do different things, but you just can't remove that element without destroying that person. And if you want a real good, a horrific example, like I mentioned the other time, check out the indigenous people of North America, what happened to them in Canada and here when we basically came in and told them, nope, you can't worship your ancestors or your gods or however you do things. And that destroyed these people and their identity and their culture. So religion is not simply a God belief.
No. Like you said in the introduction, it's a collection of rituals. It's a collection of ideas. Sometimes it doesn't even include God belief.
Yeah, and it doesn't take, again, if you're just trying to be open-minded, you can see how that has been effective in keeping people alive. Feeding people, bringing people, into a community that unites them, regardless if they like these people or not. They have to, because it's part of their the way they are. And ultimately, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but none of this really is. It's not about right or wrong or truth or false. It's about survival.
Survival, yeah. That's one thing I'll say is religion can kind of give a binding force. It creates a standard set of morality that everybody can follow. They can all come and learn parables and moral lessons. And in small communities, the church will let them get to know each other. They'll bond, and all this helps with survival. I know in modern times now, there's whole different sets of not realities, moralities, and different groups do different things. But if you're going back 1,000 years, 500 years, there wasn't this multicultural kind of thing going on. It was very much isolated villages that had a priest. Everybody formed around this priest. They all learned the morality. They all learned how to treat each other. I'd say maybe the fear of God and the fear of hell might have helped them to believe, but I'm not sure that's entirely true. It's the whole bonding experience helps them to survive. So as a survival mechanism, religion could be considered to be something very good. And these days, probably not quite so good, because now that the world is becoming a smaller place, those mix of religions are clashing. And I suppose you could sort of argue here that there's a sense of natural selection going on. Those religions that are causing the most harm are finding themselves clinging on for survival, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, I think another idea that people have to kind of start to embrace is that religion doesn't necessarily involve a God belief, but we need a place to ask those questions that science is not equipped to answer. So even like, you know me on morality, I just don't even want to talk about it. But at the same time, we need a place to talk about it, and we need a place to start the discussion and a place to be able to question what society is doing. And science isn't equipped to help you out there. And to pretend that it is again, a faith in science that people shouldn't hold.
Yeah. Science is there to give us descriptive facts and tell us what it is. It isn't there to tell us what ought to be. And it just isn't equipped to tell us what ought to be, no matter what Sam Harris argues.
Right. And there again, that's an assertion that he makes that provides no evidence for and doesn't get called out by it. And again, it doesn't have to be about a God belief, but I think we all sort of need, at least as a collective community, that idea of something bigger than us, or a reason, to push forward and to go over the next set of mountains and to find something better, and and have that. So the whole idea of religion being this tall, tiny, thin, but yet super intense sort of power, when really all it needs to be is just the place to ask those questions that science can't answer.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I prefer philosophy than religion, but
but that's what it could be. It could be a philosophical, again, it can be an entirely discussion of why are we here, and it can be just a discussion that doesn't involve gods, or it doesn't involve we were created so God could have fun watching us, or whatever. It can just be but even still, we need people to be able to explore those questions. And I think sometimes people forget to how natural it is to believe in something supernatural. And the whole babies are atheists sort of silliness. And again, a baby obviously doesn't understand infant baptism, or post millenarianism, or anything like that, or the Ten Commandments, right? And it could be any sort of God concept. And it's like a child or a baby has no problem creating something under their bed, right? The boogeyman,
Yeah.
right? They don't know what it is, but they're scared of it. And
Yeah.
it's something malevolent that's there to harm them. They've never seen it. They maybe heard a sound once or whatever, but they create that in their head. So you have to have that place for people to explore those thoughts and those ideas. And yeah, and if you can find something that makes a community a better bunch of people, then man, I'd pay for their Ubers to go to church every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'll get a lot of atheists. I mean, it's responding to some Christians who are like, without God, there's nothing to stop you from going out and killing people. Everything is permissible without God. And you'll get the atheists who will argue something like, well, if religion is the only thing stopping you from killing people, then please be religious. And I think that's sort of a trite response to something
Yeah,
like that, because religion isn't, personally, I don't think religion is the thing holding them back from killing people, like,
no,
just to get that out of the thing. But religion doesn't just do something like that. Religion gives some people hope, and it does kind of confine them to behaving in particular ways. Like, that's kind of one of the arguments of people for against people like Lenin and Stalin. It's their lack of God belief and lack of afterlife punishment that meant that they could starve all these people to death, put everybody in the gulags. They had no fear of ultimate punishment.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, and it allowed them to do absolutely, to incite terror. And then in the Nazis case, extermination,
Yeah,
where like with Stalin and Lenin, he mentions that their motivation was more terror and
yeah.
keeping people in line. And in the Nazis, it was more to eliminate groups of
Refashion
people,
humanity in a particular
refashioning humanity.
image.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. Yeah, that's the true. And maybe a better way of saying, if religion keeps you from killing people, maybe a better way to say it is, if religion allows you to comfort in a time of grief,
yeah,
extreme grief, be religious.
yeah,
If it helps you get through the day, if it answers some questions or gives you comfort or some sense of purpose or meaning, then yeah, it shouldn't just be like keep you from being a serial killer. It should be, if ultimately it makes your day better or it makes you able to process or move forward, then do it. And
yeah.
there should be no shame in that or mocking or anything.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I think that is one of the reasons that we'll always find. I mean, you get atheists who are like, religion will be gone in 50 years,
Yeah,
but atheists have been saying that for like 500 years. I think even Nietzsche said it, and Freud said it. Religion will be gone soon.
yeah,
But religion isn't something that is going to disappear anytime soon, unless we actually do create this society that makes people not need this kind of hope, not need this kind of thing to get them through the day, or answer the questions and give them meaning and purpose. And I think it's one of the areas where new atheism will, not new atheism, but the way atheists are today, it's where they're always going to fail. It's not so much, well, religion gives me purpose. Well, there is no purpose to the universe. You just got to deal with it. That's not really a way to approach this, because most people can't deal with something like that, or don't want to deal with something like that, or it just helps them get through. I mean, life is a pretty pissy place, really, in all things said. Yeah,
yeah. And again, people need to find the reality on their own time in their own way. And just
yeah,
because you or I have figured out or whatever our reality is, someone needs to be able to have the grace to take the time. And even you would say that if I were religious, you need to find your path, and it'll be easier for some people than it will be for others.
Yeah.
And because our life paths are different, our experiences are different, and our evidence that we've put in our head is different. So
Yeah.
Everyone's going to kind of hit it on their own timetable. But I've seen it with both atheists and Christians, where they now are saved or now have deconverted, and damn it, all y'all need to get up on the same page now, because I'm here. And that's just not how things work. And yeah, and a good book too, and I think I've mentioned this before, the one atheist that does not believe that religion is going to go away in 50 years is this gal, Susan Jacoby, who wrote a book entitled something to the effect of The History of Secularism in the United States. And she's quick to point out that there's been 4 great awakenings in the United States. So it's a cycle. We may be on a upswing of non-belief or a downswing. And again, you can't conflate church attendance with belief.
Yeah.
People quit going to church does not mean they've abandoned their belief. That means they've abandoned their church.
Yeah.
And perhaps what happens is another church pops up, or something that now makes them feel like, well, maybe that old church wasn't so bad, or whatever. But abandoning a church, not going to church, not the same as abandonment of belief.
Yeah, and that's something I kind of like to mention to a lot of atheists who will say, atheism is on the rise. And they point out church attendance in America and say, that the nones are rising and rising. Well, there's a very big difference between non-religious and atheist. I mean, atheist can be considered to be part of non-religious, but then so can a deist or a Buddhist. Yeah. There's lots of beliefs that are in that non-religious section. So they might still be very God motivated.
They're not observant.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and that's a good point that's been brought out in this book. Is religion is about observance and belief, and that's why you can have atheistic religions.
Yeah,
and that's a thing, and also you can have atheists that act religious.
Yeah,
that's a thing. And again, I know people have been programmed to poop their pants if they hear atheist and religion in the same sentence. But again, religious does not necessarily have anything. And as you pointed out, up until Christianity was one of the first to say, what do you believe? That's what matters more than the traditions or what you did at the altar. You brought in the fatted calf or whatever. That's observance. That's not a belief. You did that, and nobody asked what you believed. You did it and you observed. And the Romans were the same way. They wanted you to do the festivals or do the rituals, but nobody cared what you believed or not. And so I think when we say non-religious, that doesn't give us the liberty to talk about belief.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
And then he kind of moves on in this book to talk about the Bolsheviks. Yeah. And of course they overthrew the czars, and some of the horrific things that Lenin did. And again, you get kind of this weird sort of argument you see on the internet about equating, like there's a scoreboard of who's killed more people, Christians or atheists. Yeah. And I think it's always been a silly thing to me, because again, you can't separate out the religious aspect of a secular government and pin it on one or the other. And the motivation wasn't, in Lenin's case, it was, there was no motivation from a church he was trying to appease. There was no scripture that he was reading, but they went and, put in a horrific number of people to their death. And then the weirdest thing that he mentions and talks about is how Lenin then kind of became like a shrine after he died.
Yeah, they built the cube.
Yeah, everyone had to put a cube in their house, and then they actually like scuttled his body out of the country when the Nazis invaded. And I guess they still I think it's still a thing. And like they actually dress him and stuff, like put new clothes on him and put some cargo socks on and some shorts on and some sandals. Casual Friday for Lenin, I guess. But what a weird thing to do, for a group that's atheist. And but again, I think it just goes back to the whole predominant concept that it's hard to be one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, just simply by virtue of how humans work, all the things that came before us will influence us. I mean, that was sort of the Confucian way. Like, Confucius argued that the thing that makes us human is the ritual. And he argued for certain family rituals, religious rituals. Rituals are they've been handed down to us for so long that it's part and parcel of who we are. So even if we create sort of an atheist government, it's still going to involve a lot of these beliefs that have been handed down over the years. We might not believe that God exists, but we believe that by doing the right things in the right way, it will reveal the knowledge we need to move on to the next step of humanity and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then also it's this idea basically that, and this is an idea they had before Lenin died. There's a quote here that says, "I am certain that a time will come when science will become all powerful, that I'll be able to recreate a deceased organism. I am certain that the time will come when one will be able to use the elements of a person's life to recreate the physical person. And I am certain that when the time will come when the liberation of mankind using all the might of science and technology, the strength of which we cannot now imagine, will be able to resurrect great historical figures. I am certain that when that time comes, among the great historical figures will be our comrade."
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things they did. They tried to keep his body refrigerated and frozen in the hopes that science could revive him in the future.
Yeah. And it's a faith, right?
Yeah. Exactly. There's no evidence that science will ever be able to do any of these things, but they certainly believe that science will one day solve all these problems. And I mean, it's one of the big things in science. How do we expand our lifespan? How do we live forever? That kind of thing. Especially in sci-fi. It's a big themes in sci-fi, yeah.
Yeah, and as we pointed out in the last chapter, this is, the pushback on that idea has not always been the church or Christians. It's been other atheists and writers like Vonnegut and Matheson and so on and so forth that push back on the idea of, the problems that we have, and the idea that science and technology will solve everything, and we just got to march our way to that point. It is very, very, very Christian.
Yeah, I think it's very human as such. I think something like that you could probably argue is instilled into us through evolution as a survival mechanism. But yeah, it is also very Christian, which is understandable considering the thousands of years of, well, I suppose thousands of years is stretching it a bit, but let's say 1,500 years of Christian-based kind of government and expansion and the way the countries have worked and all that, we're obviously going to be influenced by that kind of thinking. And I think it's kind of what he's arguing in the book, that we need to learn to strip ourselves away from it because we're not paying attention to where it's influencing us in other areas.
Right. And also, if you have a faith in science, that science will do that, that's okay.
Yeah.
If that's what you believe, but that's really no different than a faith in a God, or
Yeah.
you have just as much evidence as the God person does, and it's your belief and your history and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not to say that you can't have faith in science, or you can't, if you do, you do, but the one isn't any better than the other. And then, like you say,
Different.
it's just different. Yeah. And again, I think we're programmed to have that faith too. I don't think we can just decide not to have faith in either. Because until, none of these people are still alive, right? They never saw Lenin, so they have no way of knowing that they were right or wrong, unless there is a God and they're all in hell or heaven or whatever. And God's like, yeah, look, you're all wrong. But unless that's the case, then where's the opportunity for correction? It's just not there, because we got the one life, and we don't get to see that we were right or wrong in a lot of these things. So, it's like the people that believe in the end times, or if they die before it happens, then they're technically not wrong, other than if they thought it was going to happen in their lifetime, then they're wrong. But if they think that, God's going to come back and raise the dead and this, that, and the other thing, then they go to their grave not knowing. And same with these guys. So you don't have the opportunity to say, whoop, I guess I was wrong. And so having that faith, I think, is about the only thing you can do. But I think where you can make an adjustment is understand and embrace that it's just a horse in a race.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of one of the reasons why he keeps driving this point home about faith and atheism, is to sort of express the kind of point you're making here, where we're never going to live to see the fruits of, that kind of thing. We just have to have faith that 100 generations down, our descendants are going to be living in a better place. When we aim and hope for society going a particular way, we are doing that on faith. We're doing it. We have evidence that it might be better, but we have no evidence. I mean, if you look at Marx's work, he argues that, by getting rid of religion and you go into like a communist thing, that will help the proletariat and it will give them freedom. But then when it actually gets implemented by the Soviets, it becomes something that's nothing like Marx envisioned. And I mean, as far as I know, Marx argued, he changed his mind several times. I think he mentions it in the book. He talks about how you can't have totalitarianism with communism and all that. So his argument was kind of based on a faith. It was like, here, if we do all this and we follow this particular Bible, the Communist Manifesto, the world will get better. Here, take my word and go spread it. He never really properly saw everything that happened from it.
Right. And I think, like we were talking before, the removing religion, as far as Lenin saw it, was the removal of the religious people.
Yeah.
And, that's horrific. So I think that's the way he saw to get that done. And then, once that started happening, then people would either, renounce their religion, and again, religion being observances, not beliefs. They still going to believe what they believe, but you can, we're certainly not observe or practice that part you can abandon, but you can't necessarily abandon your beliefs. So that's I think, the problem with what, and again, Lenin's motivation probably wasn't to be the best Marxist ever. It was probably more to gain control of that country, which was going through its own revolution and everything, and stabilize and get back into being a country.
Yeah. And I mean, this Lenin thing sort of brings me back to something I mentioned a couple of chapters ago about the League of Militant Atheists, where you get atheists today that say nobody's ever killed in the name of atheism. But here we have killing. It's more complicated than saying it's just in the name of atheism. But part of that killing of the church was about the promotion of atheism and the dropping of religious observances and getting rid of the power that the church had, but also seen as freeing people from the shackles and the opium of religion.
Yeah. And then the other side of that John Gray talks about then is the Nazis who came along. And part of the struggle for me in this portion of the book was, you sort of, the one of the big meme wars is, was Hitler a Christian or an atheist? And it's really, that doesn't really matter, because the whole Nazi movement, most of the Germans, whether they were Nazis or were not, were religious or theists, and so, but, Hitler himself, but the Nazis very, very definitely were not, again, motivated by scripture or a holy book or a church. And it just seems like a wrong thing to worry about, whether Hitler was an atheist or a Christian. It shouldn't make you feel good or about him being an atheist, or it shouldn't make you feel good if he was a Christian, because first of all, there's no atheists today and no Christians today that practice either atheism or Christianity in the manner that he did.
Yeah.
And as a side note, if you want a good article, go to the History for Atheists website, and there's some really good information that we'll discuss that, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. But to actually, because it is interesting in the idea of who was this man, that part is something worthwhile to understand and explore. But to do that just to put him on one side or the other, when clearly nobody embraces what he is. And the reality is that more important about the motivation, of being an atheist, Hitler being an atheist or a Christian, would be, man, a lot of both sides died in the camps. So that's the part where you need to be concerned, is who was targeted. And, certainly atheists were to a small degree, but certainly theists paid the price for Hitler. So, I'm not sure where that discussion of whether he was, a Christian or an atheist should make anybody feel good one way or the other. It just seems like a very silly thing.
Well, like you've said before, it's just a way of maligning the outgroup that you dislike.
Right.
It's just a way of saying, well, my group must be much better than yours because it doesn't include this person. The worst person in history doesn't belong to us, it belongs to you. So therefore you must, repent of your sins for creating this person. When in truth, neither Christianity nor atheism created who he was. Sociological elements and, extreme poverty and the feeling of being attacked by outsiders, and all that is what created Hitler.
And probably YouTube debates.
Yeah. Modern day debates is what created Hitler.
Yeah, probably. But it's a it's just a weird thing for people to really and really dig their feet in on,
Yeah.
and act like, that we know for sure, and pretty much deny the historical stuff. And again, the thing that complicates it is there was a lot of religious people in Germany, the vast majority. Leaders, speak in terms of, God is with us, God is this, and there ain't a lot of history leaders in history are said, I'm going to ask you to do this. It's going to piss God off, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's just not something they say. But again, the lack of respect for religion, or the lack of a pushback from a religious agency, can allow for these things to happen. Because
Yeah.
again, if they scientifically believe that this is how we make, our race perfect, or this is how we eliminate this element of society, that's a scary proposal there.
Yeah. And I think, like you said last week, when you believe reason, rationality, and science is on your side rather than just something that's faith based, you're more likely to dig your heels in because you're more likely to think you've reached that because of intellectual reasons and based on evidence. You'll feel more righteous in it,
Yeah.
if righteous is the right word.
Yeah, and Nazis got us to the moon.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And so these folks weren't just a bunch of wackadoodles. They embraced science. They embraced pushing all that forward. They just didn't have any sort of qualms about why we should do it, or if this is a good thing to do. And that's kind of what can happen if you don't have that system of people. And I think there's, with the atheist online community, a pretty big gut reaction to just push forward and not give any sort of credence to a religious, question.
Yeah.
And it's not always good. A religious feedback or pushback is not always good. But you just see it throughout history with the racial inequalities, and now with various trans groups or LBGT groups. And there's a lot of people that are fueled by arguments based in what they feel is science, and
Yeah.
perhaps it is what they're saying. And we have to, again, we don't want to make the same mistakes that were made in the infancy of understanding natural selection and evolution, and going in with the idea that the Europeans were superior,
Yeah.
and then certain Europeans were superior to other Europeans. We don't want to make those sorts of mistakes when we're here, and again, that's where questioning science should never be a bad thing.
Yeah. And I mean, once you stop people questioning science, you're kind of turning it into a religion. You're creating blasphemy laws in the name of science.
Yeah, and science probably doesn't need a bulldog or a guard dog.
It doesn't. I mean, sure, there are people that don't accept science these days, or certain parts of science. But for the most part, it is so ingrained in our communities, our cultures, are moving forward that it doesn't need protecting anymore. Back when Darwin was bringing out evolution, he needed his bulldog to protect him. He needed somebody forceful to go out and say, this is the way it is. And sure, there are still people where that needs, mostly in the deep south in America, but science as a whole doesn't really need that anymore.
Yeah, and that's a good distinction. Maybe a particular thought or a particular avenue might need it, but the whole concept of it, and I think that's what we have to do a better job of, and where we in America here want to blame the whole mega phenomena on religion. And, first of all, not religion. And okay, Christianity, that's closer. But again, no, not all Christianity. It's not as if Donald Trump's up there quoting scripture. He can't even hold the book the right way.
Yeah.
So, this it's again, like you say, they want to malign the problem. But again, and certainly there is a religious element in that group, but it's kind of like their understanding of what America is too, right? Part of being American is we have an election, we need to respect the results of the election, and it's like, no, so do you blame democracy for that? Do you blame election results for that? And just to pin it all on this is a problem of religion. No, this is a problem of a bunch of shitty people that got kicked out of Europe 400 years ago that are still allowed to be shitty, and that's the problem. And a lot of them happen to be religious, but what they're doing right now is not going to be solved by removing religion, and certainly not in any kind of timetable that matters. We need to be able to combat this through the ballot box. And like I said, the only reason why we have control of the Senate is because of a black pastor from Georgia, and all of the churches and all of the work that was done with those people getting together and winning that state twice to preserve our Senate, or at least hold on to it by a thread, and they don't get so that you gotta if you want to put the religion on the mega aspect, you also got to put it on the people that saved us from losing the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, and also Biden. Biden's biggest block of supporters are not atheists. And, as much as you want to scream and cry about Trump, and we should also have to recognize that a lot of religious people supported Biden and to a historic level. So that's another kind of aspect of the government. And he doesn't really talk about this in the book, I guess, considered bonus material. But, but again, the idea of just, calling, looking at some awful thing one of Donald Trump's minions does, and then being like, see, this is what religion is. And it always bothers me too, especially living here in Tennessee, where people make it out to be like where it's all these uneducated, hill dwellers and guys, in a NASCAR t-shirt and no teeth. And there's that element for sure, but it's also 55-year-old professionals that have went to college, very successful from a career standpoint. That's a huge contingency of this group too. Yeah. And the point is we need to stay focused and we need to stay on target and not trying to eliminate religion. I think we could all agree if we squash this one little element that allows us to make, and again, speaking just for the United States, allows us to keep our rights, our voting. Women can have the rights they had just a few years ago, and so on and so forth. Attacking religion as a whole does not do that.
No. Like you mentioned before, attacking evangelicals might help solve the problem and unite the non-evangelicals, as a kind of group. But attacking the whole of religion as if they are evangelicals will just push people closer to that.
Yeah. Well, and what we should be doing here is watching the evangelicals push on the progressive liberal Christians and we should be aligning ourselves with those
We should,
folks.
yeah,
And
we should be
supporting.
defending.
And they're up there fighting the evangelicals just like we are, and recognize who your allies are. And again, they're the ones that showed up in the bigger numbers to give us the presidency and the Senate. So it's sort of like the chicken hawk syndrome, right? Remember that little, I don't know if you remember the Looney Tunes with the
Foghorn Leghorn. Yeah.
The guy, yeah, he's all piss and vinegar. And
Yeah.
and that's fun, but also too, you got to kind of understand that the atheists aren't going to, and again, the idea of moving people away from religion, not necessarily changing their beliefs, but also that timetable ain't going to happen before 2024 is over.
No, it's probably not going to happen before 23-24 is over.
Right. And then who knows by that time, then the next version of this book will have the mega chapter and how atheists bone that up. But again, you need to allow for some allyship and some compromise, and not be so hardwired into just a knee-jerk poop your pants relationship or reaction because someone mentioned praying to Jesus or whatever. That's not the important thing. And again, I just go back to the Nazis. I'm pretty sure they weren't concerned about a person's God belief, right? When they picked out who they picked out, they weren't asking, do you believe in God or not? It didn't matter. So
they're like, they mostly went after people who spoke out against them, or
looked a certain way, or had a name, or somebody said they were this person. That's all they needed. They weren't real concerned about belief. And then the last bit of this chapter, he talks about evangelical liberalism, and and again, it's kind of got the same sort of feel of people adapting sort of Christian monotheistic moral values, and again believing that first of all that they can somehow be applied universally. We can do these great equality things and somehow pull this off in a universal way without any sort of evidence or historical precedents to show that we can do that.
Yeah. And I mean, the evidence seems to not only not show that, but go against it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there are plenty of examples of humanity, kind of dropping religion and going their own way and starting to do good, even if they are still going off some of the ideas and sort of remnants of monotheism. But there's also plenty of evidence to show that, sometimes when we drop the religion and we keep the remnants of those things go particularly bad.
Yeah. And there's just no, and he does say that liberalism is, a good way, but not necessarily a universal savior. And he kind of closes with this one vote or one quote here, which I think, again, kind of just summarizes a lot of his idea. But it's, yet liberals persist in imagining that only ignorance prevent their gospel from being accepted by all humankind, a vision inherited but from Christianity.
Yeah.
So there again, it's once we tell everybody about science and reason, once we tell everyone about equality and liberalism, once we tell everyone about the blood of Jesus, people are going to accept it and comply.
Yeah. And I mean, you do sort of see that in the atheist community as well today, at least on Twitter and Facebook, where if we just point out that there's a contradiction in the Bible, that'll stop people believing in the Bible.
Right.
Or if we just introduce people to logic and reason and tell them that they should only believe things based on evidence, then that'll get rid of religion and make the world a better place, forgetting the fact that, people generally aren't convinced by evidence alone. They're not thinking about how humans work. They're just thinking about this idealized future.
Right. Or the idea that we debunk Jesus, so therefore no one will go to church, and yet here we are. People are still going to church, and
Yeah.
that all boils back to the whole idea of some sort of evidence scoreboard in the sky, or some sort of burden of proof. And it's like, y'all haven't met your burden of proof if people are still going to church, and you just kind of yelled at them a lot. That's it. And,
Yeah, that is pretty much it. They made fun of them a bit, and
yep.
mocked them and called them stupid, and that didn't change their minds. So
so again, the and a lot of good in the last two chapters, especially, a lot of good biographical information,
yeah,
a lot of good historical information, especially for names that you do see a lot and may not know who these people are or how they fit together in a timeline. So I'm enjoying that as well too, kind of piecing that a little bit together, and a good kind of launching place to check out some of these other ideals and programs. But it's just kind of this idea that atheists, and again, and I've said this before to you, Dave, that I see the same arguments made by atheists today, like you can't prove a negative. Christians were saying that 25 years ago.
It's where it started.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff is like, you can trace a lot of these back to Christian arguments, and they've just been adapted. And and again, I guess that's natural selection or something.
Yeah. It's it kind of shows you the repeating nature of history as well.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing I found interesting in this chapter is the Munster Anabaptists and the sort of Stalinists and Leninists and the Nazis. They all sort of had a repeating history.
Yep.
And because people are, rather than paying attention to that repeating history and saying, well, this has been tried before and it's failed, that faith carries them through, that this time it's going to be a little bit different. This is the one that's going to be the savior. And it gives good reason to further pay attention to the idea that these things might be based on faith.
Yeah, and faith might actually be something that's inherent in all of us.
Yeah.
And not just as simple as a belief without evidence.
Yeah. It's sort of like people who argue, I don't hold beliefs, I don't accept anything without evidence. All you're really doing is saying that you don't understand how humans work when you make a statement like that.
Or yourself.
Or yourself, yeah.
And that's the biggest sin of that is pretending and then if you believe that's the bigger problem, that if you think you've come to all your beliefs that you don't think you hold because of reason and logic and evidence, that's not you have not put yourself in a good place to understand yourself even.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the main reasons why, even though there's stuff in the book I disagree with, there's a lot of stuff I agree with, but I think it makes a lot of salient points based around the idea of humans and faith and blind belief in the future and all that kind of stuff. And I think more atheists need to pay attention to that because they're so busy doing the knee-jerk reactions of, I don't accept anything on faith. Faith is ridiculous. Faith is for people who can't think for themselves. Their denial of these things is what leads to this eternal recurrence of things like the Anabaptist of Munster and Lenin and Hitler.
Yeah, and Great Awakenings.
Great Awakenings, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the and again, there's just the lack of, and it's not something. I mean, I would have drawn the dots there. I've definitely heard about Great Awakenings, but I never really thought about it until I read that book. And yeah, and it also should point to the fact that there were great atheist speakers in America, a while back. Gosh, his name escapes me right now, but certainly the fella from the 19th century, early 20th century, maybe. They call him the Great Agnostic. It wasn't like, what's that?
Ralph Waldo Emerson?
No, not him. Here, let me do a Google thing real quick here. I'll probably think of it.
I know who you mean.
Ingersoll. Robert Ingersoll.
That's it.
Yeah. So this guy, and honestly, way better thinker than any of the dipshits we've had in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And that guy was a rock star, and influencing a lot of people. And he, make sure I'll get it right. He died in 1899, and born in 1833. So the idea that now all of a sudden we're speaking out. No, this guy was speaking out, and I mean, he was, drawing big, crowds, and basically paid to speak, like a speaker, that was his thing. So,
yeah.
No, this isn't anything new. It's just kind of dumber, I guess.
Well, I mean, that it's something that's always kind of got me is you'll get atheists today, like you say, new atheists are the ones who aren't afraid to speak out. But old atheists are the ones that had to sit by passively just in case they were murdered or what have you.
Yeah. No, and yeah, and people didn't agree with Ingersoll, but he wasn't murdered. And
no, Hume wasn't murdered for writing critiques of religion. Mill wasn't murdered. I mean, I've been speaking out against sort of certain kinds of religion and criticizing religion since I was a kid. It's people have been speaking out against religion for a very long time.
And
so
I promise you.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I promise you, I caught more shit as a Christian Scientist than I ever did as an atheist.
Yeah.
So yeah, and honestly, yeah, I've definitely seen the bad side of Christianity more as a Christian Scientist than as an atheist. So, and I was never, I mean, just people asking me questions and, maybe, giving me a stern look or fur bra or something like that, but nothing that I would ever, like, I felt like, my well-being was endangered, or I wasn't going to be allowed to continue thinking what I was thinking, but it's cyclical. It just is. And yeah, it might be on the decline, but that doesn't mean that that's the way it's always going to be.
No, I mean, Nazism was on the decline. I mean, we killed a bunch of them, and hey presto, look at the world today. Nazism is on the increase.
Yeah, and not in Germany, it's the Confederacy, right? I mean, that died away up until the 20th century, when they sort of brought it back here in the United States. I mean, all those statues, some 700 or whatever it was statues, all of that happened like almost 100
years.
Yeah, it wasn't done right after the Civil War. It wasn't like they said, okay, here was a battlefield, let's make a grave marker for all these people and some sort of respect just for the loss of life. No, it was nothing. And then it came all back. I know in Georgia, there's that Lookout Mountain or whatever it is, and that was finished in 1970 or or something like that. So
Yeah.
more people are talking about the Confederacy today than in 1930 or 1940. So yeah, that's a great point. All these things kind of rear their heads. Just kind of cycle back.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Nietzsche argued for the great eternal recurrence. Everything just happens over and over and over again because we don't really pay attention to the history lessons or the lessons to be learned from history. We just believe that history is marching on towards an ultimate goal where all of this is just going to disappear. But you have to actually work for things like that.
Yeah. But all in all, probably of the 4 chapters, the one I probably related to the least, and looking forward to the next chapter, which is the God haters.
Yeah, I finished the chapter and I saw that title and I said to Emma, the next one should be interesting. It's the God haters. And I was tempted to read it, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So I'm probably going to start that tomorrow. And I am kind of looking forward to this one because I feel like it's going to capture. I think the first thing is on the Marquis de Sade, if I remember.
Because he foreshadowed that in the last chapter. That's definitely. And I don't know if God hater means anti-theist or anti-religion or an actual hate of God, monotheistic God, probably all three. So
I feel like it's going to be a mix of them all, especially if we're considering something like the Marquis de Sade.
Yeah, and I know that at least in my case, more of the atheism that I run across in my days it's more of the new atheist kind of thing. So now I haven't run across the Marquis de Sade in a bit. So we'll see what that's all about. I'm looking forward to it.
I am. I've read some of his work when I was much younger, but I can't say I remember much about it. I mostly remember a film based on his writings, Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, which is a very interesting but very banned film. But yeah, I think it should be a very interesting chapter, and I feel like it's one that I'm really going to relate to just because of the way the last 20 years has gone in atheism.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to discussing that, and then the next 2 chapters will be about more kind of chill, dope atheists.
It's the ones that he actually argues for, isn't it? It's the kind of atheisms that he respects and thinks we should move towards.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should probably wrap it up. I think we've been recording about an hour and a half, and it's getting close to midnight here, and I'm an old man, so I'm starting to get a bit knackered. Like, no more raving for 3 days. That's kind of worn me out in my old age.
Yeah, pace yourself.
Yeah, well, otherwise, the pacemaker will pace me.
That's right.
Yeah. We'll say good night now, and thanks for watching, people, and we'll see you again next week. And thanks for coming, Rev. Always enjoy the conversation with you. It's fantastic.
Likewise.
Good night, mate. I'll see you soon. Bye.